The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm a little blurry here. I'm noticing on my camera. I can't fix that right now. Let's go anyway. So research shows that about 70% of Americans are seeking deeper, more personal connections with their brands. At the same time, workplace culture studies also show that most employees say it's important to feel a part of a community at work, not just a place where they collect a paycheck. In other words, people are no longer satisfied with transactional relationships. They want to belong. Customers want to feel known by the brands they choose. Employees want to feel heard and seen, like I want to be seen right now with my camera, and connected to something meaningful. So today we're exploring what it looks like to build genuine community and connection in business, especially in a growing quick service restaurant brand where millions of small interactions add up to a very big impact. Mike, can you introduce our guest today?
Yeah, I'll let you fix your camera there, Steve, while I do that. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Heather Neary to our show today. She's the president and CEO of Taco John's. Now, Heather's joined Taco John's in February of 2024 and bringing more than 2 decades of experience in the restaurant brand, as well as the franchise leadership business. So before stepping into her current role, she served as the brand president at KBP Brands, one of the largest quick service restaurant franchisees in North America. And prior to that, she led the international pretzel franchise, Auntie Anne's, which we're all very familiar with, as the brand president after building her career there across a number of different roles. And today, Heather is leading Taco John's through its next chapter of growth, really focusing on a topic that we love to talk about, right? Guest experience. She's also working through franchisee success and the role that community and connection play across not just restaurants, right, but teams and even different markets and communities. So, Heather, we are so delighted to have you on our show today. Welcome to the Bliss Business Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Michael. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Now, Heather, maybe just to kick things off real simply, why did you think it was so important to discuss the topic of community and connection today? Like, why does that perhaps speak to you or personally important to you?
I think in the world that we live in today, connections are so important. And I think, the ultimate success for anybody is how they feel connected to the world around them. And I think, at the basis of everything, human interactions are all about relationships and making connections with people. I love what you guys are doing. I love the idea behind this. I think there's a lot of strife in our world. And when we can find empathy and find connections in people who may be different than us, it's a huge win for everybody.
Yeah, so key, for sure.
So Heather, we discussed this community and connection a lot. You're leading this very large QSR brand, very competitive landscape. Let's drill down, what does those concepts actually mean in practice?
The terms of community and connection?
Yes.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you can say it all you want, but I think it's really about the practice of it. To your point, Stephen, yeah. I think, community is a big part of who we are at Taco John's. It's one of the reasons that attracted me to join the brand. We're really fortunate to be a 56-year-old brand, and a lot of our restaurants are in really small rural towns across the upper Midwest. And so we really have that community piece buttoned up pretty well. And it's important that we take that responsibility seriously. When we are in these small towns, we are a key component of that small town, and making sure that we're making those really meaningful connections in the community is important for our success as a brand, and also for that community's success as, a thriving small town in North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, Utah, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa. I'm missing a lot of them, but you get the idea.
Many of those for sure. So maybe, dive a little bit further into this topic, because we know that, some organizations are definitely falling short when it comes to the key components of customer experience, and then as well employee engagement, right? Steve kind of mentioned that in his intro. And so you've led brands from multiple seasons of change, from say perhaps maybe some mall-based concepts like Auntie Anne's, right, to multi-brand franchise platforms, and now really with a national taco chain. So you've had a ton of experience, and maybe looking across all of that experience, where do you see, say, the traditional approaches of customer experience and employee engagement, falling short, and maybe what are some of the keys that you've like put in place to try to remedy poor customer experience and improve employee engagement?
I think, Michael, a lot of it is really about being authentic and being who you are. I think I can tell you what I do, but it's not necessarily what you would do, Michael, or what feels real to you based on who you are as a person. For me, a lot of it for me is I do what I say I'm going to do, and I say what I'm going to do, and I try to be real to people. I try to take away that barrier of, we're a franchise organization. So we've got the franchisor, we have our franchisees running our restaurants in the community. We have an ownership group. We have our corporate employees. I have a lot of stakeholders, and it's incumbent upon me to make sure that I'm reacting properly to all the different stimuli that are out there and helping our folks navigate through all the change that's happening. I mean, I've been here a little less than 2 years now. I'm having a great time. I love it. But I think it's really important that I'm constantly listening, and not listening to respond, but just listening, because I think in those moments where you're actually listening for comprehension is when you get the most meat off the bone. And I think for me, it's about spending time in restaurants. It's about remembering things that are important for folks. It's about remembering birthdays and important dates in their lives, and their anniversary with the company. And if they were having a rough week last week, am I circling back with them the following week to say, hey, how are things going? We did an employee engagement survey. We do one every year here. And coming out of that, people said they didn't know me as well as they thought they should. So I'm now in the middle of doing one-to-ones with every employee. I did it when I first got here in 2024. And then last year I did it like a little bit, but now I'm in the middle of doing it again, and I'm having great, really deep, pithy conversations with all of our employees. And I think that's been really helpful.
I'm so glad that you started off by saying, be authentic, and sort of what you describe is funny, right? Because it's not rocket science, right? There isn't this one silver bullet, but just listening to what you said, basic things like listening, being a human, right? And I think it is difficult, certainly for someone in your seat, to have to feel like you have to wear a different, mask or present yourself differently in one place or another. And it sounds like that's really not the case.
It's not what I do. I mean, if you know me, my friends who know me know that I'm the same way, whether I'm with my girlfriends on a girls' trip or with my husband on the weekend having dinner, or with, my kids or my grandkids, or at work. I mean, I'm the same person. I am radically transparent, maybe sometimes to a fault. I say what I think. I'm very direct. I'm from the Northeast. I think you guys are not from the Northeast, but I'm from the Northeast. Yeah. And I don't know any other way to be. And I think it's important to be really direct and say what you're thinking while doing it in a kind way. Yeah. I think there's a difference between being nice and being kind. And I think that is a differentiator, but I want to always be respectful and offer the same dignity to everybody else that I want in return.
So key from a leader, without a doubt. So maybe moving more into this point about the guest experience, right? Because when we look at the broader restaurant industry, I'm curious in your mind, because in terms of from my view, it does feel like sometimes brands are disconnected or they misunderstand the guest. And so, what do you think are some of the reasons why brands tend to fall into this trap of perhaps misunderstanding that what their guests are really craving for, right? When their experience is there. Why do you think that happens?
I think at the most basic level, our guests are coming to our brand to eat, right? They're coming to fill their bellies. They're coming to enjoy a meal, enjoy tacos with their potato olays and their boss burritos. I think where we fall short is when we recognize that people are going through all kinds of different things in their personal life, and that drive-through experience might be the only positive one they have all day.
Right.
It also might be the only time they've talked to somebody all day long. Like that might be the only human interaction they had all day. And what we can do to make that experience a more positive one and to have them drive away with a smile on their face is a huge win for me. One of the things we do a lot of here is a lot of recognition. We've got a lot of incredible crew members all over the country who are serving our guests every day. And truly our crew members are the face of the brand. You know, most guests will never see me working in their restaurant. I do spend time in restaurants, but most guests will never see me, but they will see all the different employees working in our restaurants. And I have the utmost respect for what they do and how hard they work, because it is hard work. But we do try to recognize them when we get those positive guest comments in. So we get plenty of guest comments and they're not all positive, but once a month we pull out all the best guest comments and we push them back out to our entire franchise system and shout out, you know, Bobby in Des Moines, Iowa, or Sally in Montana, to make sure that we've recognized them and upheld, like they're upholding our values as a brand to do the right thing and to give back in our communities, regardless of what the situation is. And sometimes the comments are as simple as your guests or the guests will just come back and say, your employees are just always nice to me. Like your employees are always friendly. Yeah. It's sometimes as simple as that. Yeah. We had one last month in Duluth, Minnesota, where a guest left her wallet at the restaurant. And one of our employees ended up, securing the wallet and, was there for the wallet when the person came back with, not a dime missing out of the wallet. Right. Those are a bigger deal too. But we all know how much of a headache it is when you lose your wallet and you're like, oh my gosh, what's to do with it? And when she called the restaurant, they were like, yeah, it's right here. We're putting it in the safe right now. Let us know when you come back to get it. All of those interactions, I think it's we talk a lot here about being 1% better every day. And it's not about any one silver bullet. It's about all of those moments of interaction where you can make a difference in somebody's day.
Yeah.
Whether it is walking into the office in the morning and saying good morning to everybody, whether it's I'm on my way to work and I kind of have a hankering for bagels. So instead of just getting myself a bagel, I'm going to grab some for the whole team. All little moments like that, saying hi to our guests, wishing them well. We operate in a lot of small towns and a lot of our employees know our guests by name and by order. And when they hear their voice in the drive-through, they're like, oh, there's Janet. Janet's here today for her, for her tacos and her burritos. That's super meaningful to me. And it's something that, we really can play in that unique space at Taco John's because our footprint is so rural and is so community focused.
That's a nice thing, right? That comes naturally. And you hit on so many of the key principles that we love to, talk about when it comes to conscious capitalism. Your earlier one, right? About multiple stakeholders. We can't really just think about the shareholders or maybe the franchisee. It takes everyone from the suppliers and even the frontline employees. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the frontline employees, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that really deliver much of the experience. I mean, of course, like the food and everything goes into it as well. But yeah, they make a very big difference.
For sure.
I love that you mentioned kind of that system of recognition for the employees, and especially you've got to do it on scale, which is very tricky. It's hard to get that recognition when you're dealing with scale. But I think that's really what happens is that's part of that feedback loop, that positive feedback loop that you want to kind of encourage in there so that that strong community that you're building among your employees doesn't happen by accident, right? It's very purposeful and intent in it. And then that translates into it just feels good here kind of experience, right? For those who are coming in there. So any other systems like that you've put in place to build that community and connection? This is what we love to pull out for other businesses. Anything like that where you're really thinking intentionally and things aren't happening by accident, so that we want better interactions in the world like that. I love that example that you mentioned, that they could hear, they know who it is by the voice.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think for us at Taco John's, a lot of what we do is really focused around the guest experience, the franchisee experience, the crew member experience, and our employee experience. We've got to remember, like I said before, all of our stakeholders.
Yeah.
For us, it's about, all those small things. So whether it is, I think in this day and age, we are inclined to send an email or a text message when a phone call can be really meaningful. I'm a huge fan of picking up the phone and calling a franchisee if there's an issue or if they did something great. or if they had like a great sales day, like let me call them and thank them for what they're doing. I pick up the phone quite a bit. And I think in this day and age, people are inclined to take the electronic route, and that can be a little less meaningful. I'm also a huge fan of written thank you notes, and I'm super, super busy. And so I don't want to ever lose sight of the importance of gratitude. And so literally every Thursday at 9 a.m., it's been on my calendar for probably 15 years now. It is a standing 9 a.m. Thursday meeting that's just for me, that just says gratitude. And that's my reminder. If I haven't already recognized and thanked somebody for something that week, I'm doing it in that 9 a.m. hour on Thursday mornings, where I write a thank you note. I pick up the phone and call somebody. I did it this morning. Today happens to be Thursday. I did it today. I've been doing it for many, many years. And it's my intentional way of, in this busy world that we live in, I don't want to ever lose sight of every single person and how important they are to making the magic happen here.
Yeah, it's important to buy out that opportunity.
It's such a pro tip for people out there, is to like schedule that connection in some way.
Yeah.
It sounds
it was feedback I got many years ago. I was as an Annie Ann's, and I don't even remember, I was not the president then. I was maybe the CMO at the time. And they're like, well, we know you appreciate it, but you never actually say thank you. And I was like, of course I do. And then in my head I went, yeah, no, I probably don't. Like, I'm probably like on to the next, like I move quickly, and I'm on to the next thing. And so that was my like smack in the face aha moment. My team was super honest with me, and I'm so grateful to them for that. And in my mind, the best way for me to not ever lose sight of that gratitude piece was to smack it on my calendar for 9 a.m. every Thursday. It's been there for literally years, and I never lose sight of it.
And I would say, because we've had it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we've had other guests say the same thing. And it's not a disingenuous thing to calendar it, right? Other things are going to eat up that time, or they're going to creep into that time. So we absolutely have to buy out that opportunity to be able to do those things. And it's good practice too, just as parents and as friends, as well as, business colleagues.
Yeah.
So maybe dive in deep a little bit further into the point of community, right? Sometimes it gets to a point with a very large system, and even some of the other brands that you've worked at in the past. Any large system, will have some locations where the culture is just on point, right? It's thriving, and then there's others that feel maybe more disconnected. And so when you see perhaps a restaurant or even a market that doesn't feel that it's as rooted in community, and that may not be at Taco John's, right? It might be at some of the other places that you worked with as well, that aren't as rooted in the community as they could be. What are some of the ways that you diagnose that, or that you come about maybe finding out about that?
Yeah, I think those kind of issues are showing themselves in other ways too. Those are typically the restaurants that get more negative comment cards. Those are the restaurants that their sales aren't where they need to be. Their traffic isn't where they need to be. There's other things that are kind of looking out to you. And so you look at it and you go, look at the full picture. Look at their full scorecard and go, they've had a lot of turnover. They don't have a consistent management team. The franchisee's absentee franchisee. Those are all things that kind of lead you to go, what's going on here? And those are just when you have to have those really tough conversations with folks to say, we want you to be successful, and we believe you can be successful. And here are some tools that you can be doing in your restaurants to make sure that, your team understands that you're there for them, and that you're being compassionate about scheduling. It sounds really simple, but in the hourly space, having a schedule 2 weeks ahead of time is super important for our hourly crew members who are working, because it gives them the chance to schedule their own lives, whether they're a high school student or a mom scheduling her child, around her child's childcare. When we can offer them the courtesy and the respect of giving them a schedule 2 weeks ahead of time, you're giving them the respect of saying, you're important to me, your time is important to me. And even small little pieces like that allow you to have less turnover, have stronger retention, have stronger employee engagement. Generally, also the correlation is in stronger sales and better guest comments, because you've created a culture that is just stronger in overall ways. Things like when you're in the restaurant, you're working with sometimes teenagers, sometimes adults. It's a variation, but recognizing the small things that they're celebrating. Did you graduate from high school? Did you get a new car? Let's have fun with that and celebrate it. Let's bring a cake in. Let's order a pizza, and not in a way that's cliche, but let's do things that feel authentic to you. And, every one of our franchisees is a little bit different, and they all approach this differently. Some are really big franchisees with like 10, 15, 25 stores, and they'll do big trips for their top GMs and take them to Jamaica or the Bahamas or somewhere.
Right.
Others do different things, but all of those components, whatever's authentic to you and feels right to you, are wins. And I think there's a lot of those pieces of the puzzle that all help to grow the business, to create a culture of engagement and connection and inclusion.
That's very interesting, because I almost had the perception of where things needed to be kind of cookie cutter, but it sounds like, in some cases or in certain markets, it's just fine, right, to be able to, do something that's, more custom, I guess, to the local area, or like you said, maybe feels a little bit better to that. So they don't have to all fall into the same mold and do the same thing.
I mean, obviously we're a franchise brand, so it's important that we're being consistent from an operational standard, from a food preparation perspective, from a food safety perspective. Those are all the important pieces. But an operator that owns one restaurant and is in his restaurant every day is a lot different than an operator that owns 25 stores across 3 states.
Sure.
And you've got to be able to give them the flexibility to do what feels right for them. When they come to us and ask for tips, we give them all of our tips. We'll also kind of diagnose things along the way and say, hey, we can kind of see this is slipping. Let's make sure that we're recognizing that. But at the end of the day, each operator has their own style. Some of them have been there for 40 years. Some of them have just bought the restaurant in the last 6 months. I mean, there's lots of different people and they have lots of different styles. We want to honor that and respect that not everybody's the same. And what works for, the guy that owns a single unit in Billings, Montana is different than the guy that owns 35 restaurants in Omaha.
So Heather, you have a ton of experience, as we kind of stated.
That means I'm old, Michael. It's okay. You can say that.
No, you're wise, right? And you've got a lot of this experience at your belt. I'm actually curious if you had to look back and maybe speak to yourself, from a number of years ago, or even for some of our followers that are perhaps newer leaders, more on the entrepreneurial part. Are there say like 3 practices or some repeatable practices that you'd say, hey, these are key when it comes to the topic of building community, either for the guests or for the employees? What are some of those things that absolutely have to be there?
Yeah, I think I've been talking a lot about the 5 C's for most of my career. The 5 C's for me are consistency, communication, collaboration, culture, kindness. And those are really important to me. I know that kindness doesn't begin with a C. I think in my alphabet. But consistency, communication, collaboration, culture, and kindness are really important to me as a leader. And that's how I run. That's how I run my business. That's how I treat other people. I want to be treated with respect. I want to be treated with flexibility. I want people to have ownership in their roles. I want people to feel empowered. I also want everybody to understand what we're dealing with. Like, what are the table stakes here? Like, where's our business at? Where are our challenges? We had our 2026 employee kickoff just yesterday here at Taco John's. And I said, we've got a lot of work to do, guys. It's going to be hard. And we're going to plow through all this work that we have to get done. And we're also going to really feel rewarded afterwards. And somebody came up to me afterwards and said, thanks for acknowledging that it's hard work, because it is a lot of hard work. And, it's important to acknowledge that we're all working hard. We all know what the goals are. But I think people need generally, like, they need to understand where the end goal is. And then you need to give them the tools to get to the end goal. But as a leader, I need to recognize that not everybody takes the same steps to get to that end goal. And to me, it doesn't matter if, you went A, F, B, Y, Z, or if you went, 1, 7, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if the end goals are clearly laid out for people, we need to give them that ownership and empower them to get the job done the way they see fit. Yeah,
I love that. Especially the point about being able to facilitate and being able to, support them with the right tools and information and have the knowledge. Because I think the autonomy in some cases, right? Because like you said, they're going to take probably a little bit of a different path. In fact, like in our agency, for example, I think Tulia might have mentioned it before the show when we were huddling, is we're a self-managed agency. And that essentially means As an account executive, you've got your book of clients. You have pod mates that are there to support you. But at the end of the day, it's your client, and we're not in your business in terms of how you're running campaigns or how you're creating ad copy or how you're creating a particular strategy. And it's it really feels like everyone has ownership of their accounts. We just give them the systems and the tools that they can use to dissect maybe what's working, what's not working in an account. But you're absolutely right about that, I think. And it builds such a in our agency, I think the impact that it has is it just creates such a high level of trust, right? Versus the micromanagement getting in everyone's business. So maybe we can.
Mike, I think one of the important things of that self-managed approach is having a clear kind of purpose, right? Is what we're talking about. And I've always appreciated that our employees, it's like, if you don't know what to do the loving thing. And that, goes to any part of the business where it's like, if they're alone, and, often doing whatever small task they have to do, that always just permeates the culture for us. And so it's like, you don't need to micromanage when people are continually thinking that way.
Make connection the goal, like you say, Steve, and at the end of the day, do the loving thing, even if it's not, financially, maybe the best, decision, because at the end of the day, it probably ends up being the best, financial decision by doing that. That was such a clear point, Steve. Exactly. So maybe, Heather, let's transition over to a topic that I love, to talk about. As an agency, we focus a lot on on purpose, the importance of an organization's purpose. What is your why? Obviously, Simon Sinek has made that very famous. And in particular, when businesses talk about building community, it can definitely sound like it's a tactic, right? Or could be a little bit like green, or whitewashing in a sense. But really, lasting community, it usually comes from having a sense of clear purpose. I think at the founding of the Conscious Capital movement, you had Whole Foods, who had a very specific purpose. They went through some very difficult times early on, getting hit by some natural disasters, but the community saw and felt their purpose and really supported them. So maybe when you get a chance to take a step back from your day-to-day and the metrics and the meetings that happen, tell us, maybe perhaps, what is the role that purpose plays at Taco John's? And for example, like, how does it shape the way that maybe you think about community?
Yeah, I mean, I think about purpose as it relates to like my legacy and the legacy of the Taco John's brand. We're a 56-year-old brand. We're in a lot of small towns. We are a strong community partner in a lot of those small towns. And how we show up every day is the purpose for what we do. And when we aren't being authentic and when we aren't honoring who we are as a brand, we violate that trust that our guests have with us. And that's a concern for me. So from my perspective, my purpose is like, what do I want my legacy to be? How do I want people to feel around me? How do I want guests to feel when they walk out of Taco John's with their tacos and potato olays? How do the employees feel when they say, I work at Taco John's? Is that a good thing? Is that not a good thing? Like, how are they feeling about what we're leaving behind? And that's where really the purpose lives for me. I used to say this at Annie Ann's. I say it here too. We're not curing pediatric cancer. We're making tacos. We're making pretzels. And we don't want to ever lose sight of that. So sometimes when things get a little tense, I'm like, whoa, let's take a deep breath. We're not solving for world peace. We're making tacos. And let's just kind of elevate ourselves out of that and realize that we're connected to something bigger. And that's one of our values too, is giving back in our communities. We've got some national charitable partners that we work with, and we also have a lot of local charities we work with that are really important. We just did a community feeding giveaway the weekend of October 31st. We gave away more than 20,000 meals. We did a free bean burrito and a free small potato olays, no questions asked. It was during the government shutdown. There was concerns about people's fundings and what they needed from that perspective. And as a system, we decided to do it. Literally, we started talking about it Wednesday night. And by Thursday at noon, we were launching it Friday.
Wow.
And I think for us, we've got a lot of franchisees that are really compassionate and really wanted to give back in their communities. And then we also match that corporately with some donations to food banks and all of the communities where we operate as kind of a compliment and to round out what the franchisees committed to doing in their markets, because obviously the burden was on them to execute the promotion at the local level. But giving back is really a strong part of who we are. And you can't ever lose sight of, there's a lot of things going on in the world around us. And we've all been very, very blessed in many ways. And we can't lose sight of folks that aren't as blessed as we are.
That totally reminds me, we had a guest on previously.
Yeah, Mike, I was going to say the difference though, I mean, that guest, I mean, they kind of did something too with their restaurant, but that was one location. To mobilize, hundreds, potentially locations, and
it's
a matter
incredible.
of days. That's pretty incredible. I love that.
And then we also, our franchisees got on board with it very quickly. Mm-hmm. It was an awesome event. Our corporate team rallied around it. They've continued to rally around it. And then we actually had some of our vendor partners call us and say, "Hey, we love what you guys did. We're kind of behind the scenes. Can we make a donation to you guys as well?" And so we actually were able to give some money back to our franchisees to offset the cost that they incurred, because our vendor partners came back to us and said, "Hey, we're going to give you X amount of dollars to offset the cost that you had from giving away burritos and potato olays for a weekend," which was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the importance of purpose is, Steve. What I was going to mention was the guest that had quoted us that, your purpose kind of makes it very clear of what your hell yes is and what your hell no's are, right? And I think to be able to move so quickly, having a very strong sense of purpose, made it like, this is a thing we absolutely, should and can do. So let's do it. Right. So it's able to move very quickly, I think, because of having that strong sense of purpose.
I mean, to be clear, it was a little chaotic for a couple of days. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. How could it not be?
We did it for the right reason. And it was like a rallying cry for us as an organization.
Yeah.
And
everyone, I'm sure, felt good about it, right? Down to the frontline employee and the franchisees. Yep.
Completely.
Well, and we're talking about, you step back, you're just doing the right thing, right? People are struggling out there. You just want to do the right thing. But really, I'll put my marketing hat on though. Really, this is one of those opportunities where you actually built some emotional connection with your communities, and you're able to, the right thing is often, turns out it'll probably give you ROI, tenfold over the course of years, just because you were there when some people really needed it. And it's so hard for people to think that way, because they're so buried in the numbers and they're so buried in, quarterly reports and earnings and all that. But it's just like, no, let's just do this, right? This is the right thing.
Yeah.
We've got an audience question. Let's go to that here. So it's from LinkedIn. Was there an experience earlier in your career that shaped the way you think about belonging and connection at work? Ooh, that's a good one.
That is a good one. I'll share kind of a not direct answer, but I will share something that I think I'll get myself there. When I joined Auntie Anne's in 2005, my husband was going to be deployed overseas for a year. He was in the military for 20 years. And I was from Pennsylvania, so I was going back to Pennsylvania for the year that he was going to be gone. I didn't tell them this when I was interviewing, but my intention was to stay for that year that he was away and then continue on to follow him in his career. I got to Auntie Anne's, and it was at a really unique time in the company. Auntie Anne's was founded by a woman named Auntie Anne. She's still alive, still a dear, dear friend of mine. She was selling the company shortly after I bought it, and the company was really transitioning from a family-owned pretzel company to the new owner really saw it as a chance to create a brand around it. And I was in the marketing function, and the work we were doing around the branding was really exciting. The menu innovation we were doing was really exciting. And 6 months into my role there, I was on the phone with my husband one day, and he was overseas and, not in the same time zone or anything. And I said, "I don't know, something's really cool going on here. I think I need to stay here." And he was like, "What are you talking about? I can't choose where I live." Long story short, he ended up pulling some strings, and he got stationed in Quantico, Virginia for his last 4 years in the Marine Corps. And he commuted back and forth, which was a 3.5-hour drive, so that I could grow my career, because something cool was happening. And I was part of a community at Auntie Anne's that was so powerful. That team at Auntie Anne's was an amazing team. I have an amazing team here at Taco John's. In fact, 3 of my executive team members came with me from Auntie Anne's. They are here now. And we've now brought some of our franchisees into the Taco John's family. And so I think, when you feel that way about the job that you're working for, it's not work, it's fun. And I know nobody says it's not your family. It's not where, work is work and family's family, but we had fun and we got along and we fought hard and we got results and we challenged each other. And it was just a really special time to be at Auntie Anne's. And I'm really blessed to have had that experience. We're creating that here at Taco John's. We've got longtime franchisees here, just like we did at Auntie Anne's. We've got a lot of single unit operators. We've got, second generation franchisees here at Taco John's as well. And creating that a second time around is really fun. And I've brought some folks with me and we're having a great time, building this brand up to what it can be and making sure that we're honoring the heritage and the legacy of the brand while recognizing that the evolution needs to be happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, this brings me to a question that I always ask every one of my guests, and I'm always fascinated with the different answers we get. But it is, what role does love play in business?
What role does love play in business? I mean, you got to love what you do, right? We spend more time at work than we do at home. And you have to love what you do. You have to love who your colleagues are. You have to love and have passion and, believe in what you're doing in a way that might sound hokey, but it's the end of the day. We spend more time at work than we do at home. And so you've got to love what you do. And when you don't have that love for what you're doing, it shows. And the results you get are lackluster as a result. We've had a lot of conversations here about, we're a small company. We don't have the resources of some of our other taco competitors that are very well resourced. That's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you have the chance to, an entry-level marketing coordinator can have a chance to wear a lot of hats that she wouldn't get to wear at another really big taco company. Here, she gets to do lots of different things, a blessing and a curse. So I think it's just important to really be passionate about what you're doing. You spend too much time at work to hate your job. I've been very fortunate. I've been working, I'm old, so I've been working for a long time. Started working when I was 14. I've never hated a job. I've been very fortunate to have really awesome colleagues, really awesome bosses, really awesome franchisees to work with. I have that here too, and I love it every day, and it makes my job fun. It doesn't mean there's aren't days that are hard, because there are days that are hard. And I don't sugarcoat things, but I'm a glass half full kind of person, and I do believe that you have to have passion for what you do, or your results will reflect that.
And that definitely comes through, Heather, without a doubt. So yeah. Can definitely feel it. I know that, for the other leaders and even younger entrepreneurs out there that may be listening, this is how you can really build community, have that passion, and, things will feel less like a machine.
Yeah,
really. So Heather, it's been absolutely great having this discussion with you. Now, for those that do want to learn a little bit more about the Taco John's franchise opportunity, or just learn a little bit more about the organization, and perhaps maybe connect with you afterwards, where would you like them to go and find out more?
Yeah, tacojohns.com is probably the best place to start. I'm also on LinkedIn. I try to be pretty active on there. We are constantly recruiting new franchisees. So if you're interested in a great taco experience, we'd love to talk with you. And, social media is out there, LinkedIn and tacojohns.com.
Awesome.
Well, and who's not interested in a great taco experience?
That's right.
And our tacos, I will tell you, our taco was voted the #1 taco in the United States this year, the #1 taco in the fast food space. And we've had a lot of fun with that. But, we make our ingredients fresh in the restaurants every day. We don't use preservatives. We do things that are really fresh, really authentic. Our tortillas have, 3 ingredients: salt, flour, and water. We keep things real here.
Yeah.
It's lunchtime where we're at, so you're making me hungry.
I know. I was rubbing it in.
Heather, thanks for giving us a window into what it looks like to build, community and connection with your franchise. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and think about your own organization and ask yourself where relationships feel transactional and where they could be more human. Often that shift from customers to community begins with kind of a single decision to care a little more than yesterday. So thank you for joining us on the Bliss Business Podcast, and we will see you next time.